Hello and welcome to C-Suite Secrets. I'm Heather Parsons, your host. I'm a serial entrepreneur, fractional CFO, and a business value strategist. I've spent years juggling business and family life while helping entrepreneurs scale, optimize cash flow, and build real financial success. On our show, we bring you real conversations with founders, executives, and operators about what actually moves the needle in business. No fluff, no filler, just smart strategy, systems that work, and insights that you can put to use right away. With that, let's dive right in. Today we have Tom Mirabella on the show. Tom, welcome.
Thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, I'm excited about our conversation. For those folks who may not be familiar with you, I'd love it if you could share a little bit about your journey and how you become an entrepreneur.
Sure, I was a born entrepreneur. I have been an entrepreneur since I'm a young kid. Had a paper route back in the day when people used to read papers. And, as the years went on, I was always looking at the next thing. I started my career out in corporate America. In my early 20s, I said, I don't know that I could do this for the rest of my life. I said I was so bored. I couldn't, I like to get things done. I don't like to, like wait for my boss and my boss's boss and etc. I'm the kind of guy that you know um wants to get problem solved and things done. So I was in corporate America for about 5 or 6 years, and then I decided take a leap of faith, try it out and see what happens. And 17 years later, we're still seeing what happens, but it's working out now. um I was single, wasn't married, I didn't, have real big responsibilities. And my now wife at the time said to me, "Take a chance. What do you have to lose? If worst comes to worst and you can't make it, you go back and get a sales job or a marketing job for a corporation in a year or two, and at least you've tried it." And um, I did, and I could never. I look back and say I can't even imagine trying to work for corporate America anymore.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. Worst case scenarios, you go back to where you were already at. Um, one of the things that you're talking about there that I always love would like to dive in on a little bit too. Was there a defining moment in your time in corporate America that you were like, nope, that's enough of that? Or was it more of an evolution?
It was an evolution. Like I just, what I had a couple of things that kind of got me there. Right. I had a boss that told me, I've always been a hard worker. I'd say I'm a doer. So I had a boss tell me at corporate America I couldn't get a second promotion. I got promoted twice in 1 year, but couldn't give me any more money because he didn't want to go to the CFO. But I said, "But you promoted me twice." He said, "I know." I said, "So," he goes, "I don't really want to go talk to the CFO about this." I was like, "Okay, whatever." We move on, continue working. Then, I switched companies. I went to a competitive company at the time. Uh, and I went to this other company, and they were like, "Oh, this is a great analysis you did. We have to schedule time with the vice president of the department." I said, "The problem's like now. It's not, we might not have a problem in 2 or 3 weeks from now." And they were like, "Well, this is how it goes." And like, kind of like talking to me like I'm a 4 year old. Like, "This is Tom. This is how it goes and how we do things." And I was like, "Okay," but I just thought about like just working like that. Like, it wasn't enjoyable to me. I want to fix the problems. I want to keep moving. I want to fix today's problem and move to tomorrow's problem. Not think about this for 2 weeks. It loses steam, and we're not worried about it anymore. So when I started to think about this, and again, I think there's a place for people in corporate America, and corporate America is successful. It really is. They have, many companies have built great companies, and they're not looking for people to push the limits on it. They're looking for people to come in, follow the plan, and work 9 to 5. Don't push too many buttons, but do enough that you stay under the kind of you stay under the radar. And
Yep.
when I think about that, like entrepreneurs are like the opposite of that. They want to go out and push the levels to whatever level and get the most results. Whereas in corporate America, so it's just a different mindset. Like, and I have my own podcast, as I've told you, and I say on it all the time, entrepreneurs are wired differently. And I've had 250 plus interviews on my podcast, and the guys that come in, it doesn't matter the line of work they're in. these entrepreneurs have the same kind of thinking, the same kind of processes, the same kind of things that they think are the right way. So it's very interesting. At first when I told people I was leaving a corporate job, my mom included, they're like, "You're crazy. What's wrong with you? Why would you do this? You have this great job. You have security. You have a nice salary." And I was like, I just can't imagine doing this. Now I'm 48. When I was thinking about leaving at 28, I was like, I can't imagine doing this for the next 30 years. I'm only 20 years in, and I just couldn't even imagine at 20 years. And I talked to some of the guys that I worked with, and again, some people, they have children, they have responsibilities, their wife doesn't work, they're divorced, they have to be there because of their obligations. Again, when I was single and in my late 20s, I had no obligations. My obligation was make sure I had enough money to go to happy hour on a Friday night, and I was in good shape. I had the chance and the risk. I could take that chance and the risk, whereas other guys couldn't. So I respect them for that, but I just couldn't be part of it.
I totally understand what you're talking about, especially about entrepreneurs being built differently. So
Yeah.
being blessed to be in this for 17 years, like now you're leading a team and you've got all these wonderful things going. Looking back, what surprised you the most about being an entrepreneur?
Oh, it's a straight up hustle. I mean, you're juggling. I always say at the beginning, and you know, I think we're in the process of franchising. We have a few franchises on the board, and I don't want them to have to go through the same things I went through 17 years ago, where you're the account manager, you're the salesman, your accounts payable, your accounts receivable, you're the receptionist, you're the maintenance guy, the janitor, and everything else. Like, there's so many things when you're an entrepreneur to start. There's so many ways to fail. And I don't know, like when you think about it, again, going back to being wired differently, to take those risks for the percentage of businesses that succeed, you're crazy. You might as well just go to a casino and play roulette, for a few hours. But on the other side is like my determination not to fail is really what overcame everything. Like I didn't want to have to go back to those guys that I worked with and go, "Oh, I'm back at the job because I couldn't make it as an entrepreneur." So my desire not to fail was greater than anything else. Like, and again, I knew that I did nice work. I knew that I was good with customers. I knew that I had these things going on. So it was just a matter of putting the pieces together. And you're going to have bad days, and you're going to have days where you're like, "What am I doing?" I was on easy street, making better money and more consistent money. But on the other side is what are you building on the other side? And thankfully, we've gotten to the point where we have a team of 25. We have some franchisees. We're running a foundation. We're investors in other companies. So it worked out for us, but it was a hustle. And it was a hustle. Then, it was a hustle. Then we got like office space. The first 7 years I worked from home. And during that 7 years, this is a little funny side note. Um, my wife, who I told you about, that told me to quit my job because it would be okay. I say to her, we're living in this small little Cape Cod house, very small, but we're both working from home. She had a little consulting company doing consulting for a handful of companies, and I'm trying to build Wingman. And we're in this little house, we're both working from home. And she's like, "You're loud during the day." I said, "I know I'm loud. I've been loud from the time I'm 3 years old. I'm loud." So she says, "Okay." I said, "Why don't we buy a bigger house? We're never going to have office rent or office expenses. Live in a bigger house so we have more room and we're not, so close to each other during the day." Great idea. Go find a bigger house, buy it. We love it. I don't think I was there 4 or 5 months, and I'm in an office at that point. So, because then I hired someone and then another person. Now I had three people in the house, and that was like a lot, during the day you know, to be working there. So we ended up in an office, but everything, I look at everything as a stepping stone. Everything happens and you have to be able to react. You have to be able to adjust, because if you take those bad days and you take those, what people say sometimes, you would be depressed as an entrepreneur. But if I just look at everything as a stepping stone. So I never made a bad decision. Everything's been a stepping stone. So even if it was a fail, I look at that as a learning.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that. And I think you were talking earlier about entrepreneurs being built differently. I think it's that ability to look at things from a different lens. It's the ability to take those hard days that really suck and come in tomorrow with a different attitude. Like, well, that shit yesterday was terrible. So I'm not doing that today. We're going to do something different, or I'm
I
going to work
also
on
believe,
something different.
firm believer in that. Even if you can have a horrible day, by tomorrow morning when I come in, I'm in great spirits. You're never going to see me down. Like, again, I could get beat up at a moment during a problem, but after that you got to spin off it. If you can't spin and adapt and adjust, you're not built for entrepreneurship.
I agree completely. And I like to mentor folks and I work with a lot of people. In entrepreneurship, I equate it a lot like whenever I work with real estate investors. I tell them from the very beginning, if this is something that you can quit and not do it, you should absolutely do that, because you're going to have days, weeks, and months that are really, really hard. And if you can go ahead and quit now, you should, because later on when you really want to quit is when you can't. And that's how I feel about entrepreneurship as well, because that's when you've got to work harder and dig a little bit deeper and do something different that really makes you uncomfortable and make it work.
If you're not comfortable being uncomfortable, you're not an entrepreneur. But I think you have to adjust, because the market changes, things that are outside of your control change, and you have to react. And again, when you have no employees, it's a little bit easier because you don't have to worry about a payroll every week.
Yeah, that's true. Or whose family you're impacting. Whenever
Yep.
you start hiring people and paying other people, that's their kids' college money,
Hmm.
or their grocery money that week, or all of the things
I
that if you
I
don't
had a
make payroll.
conversation with one of my guys yesterday. I took the team out on a boat sunset cruise. You know, everybody's been working hard, and we like to have these days, and our brand manager puts together these events for us. And we're on a boat, and one of my guys said to me, he's had his own business, but he also has no idea about how to run a business. It was a one-man band. And I said to him, I said, Bud, I said, you have to remember, at the end of the week we have 25 guys to pay. He goes, well, I have no idea what the payroll is. I said, think about your paycheck, think about what you make per year, times it by 25, and divide it down by 52. And that's roughly, before the 11% that the government's going to take from us, what the payroll looks like. That's before the health care. That's before the 401k reimbursements. I said, so just to kind of put in perspective, just do a little head count. I said, some people probably make more than you. Some people probably make less than you. But if you use yours as an average, you could figure out what my payroll is every single week. He said to me, oh, wow, Tom, I never thought about it like that. I said, so every time that you ask me questions that don't help all 25 of us, it hurts.
It does.
So my goal now, as my life has changed to, again, from being a single man operator, when we were at COVID, I had a team of about 8. So in the last 6 years, we went from 8 to 25 employees. So we've had a lot of growth since, post COVID, since June of, March of 2020, we were running 8 or 9. And now, like I say, we're running 25. But in that, what I want to do now is shape leaders to understand and grow more leaders. Because again, if people can be responsible for a project line of work, well, then they're not as relying on me. And now I'm the coach. So, and that's taken some time. And again, I also don't want to be the bottleneck. So there are times people are waiting for an answer from me. And a lot of times, like, again, we've been on this call and I see that I've missed, I don't know, a dozen text messages of people on my team. And so, but I want to get to the point where, like, I can be on this podcast, not even thinking about my phone, because I have such great leaders in place that could answer the questions. And what I want to teach and train on my leaders is, you can make a mistake. First of all, you're not going to make a mistake because you know the business very well. But make the call, have basis for the reasoning of that decision. I will have your back every time. If you have no basis for the decision, then I'm going to be annoyed. But if you come in and say, look, this is the call I made. This is why I made it. I will defend that person to the end.
That's all. It says a lot about a leader, because the buck as an entrepreneur and as the boss, it stops with you.
The buck
So
stops at me. So but again, if I'm putting faith into my team, and again, when I look at my management team, we've had someone 11 years, someone 10 years, someone 6 years, someone 5 years. So I mean, they're not rookies. Recently within the last 6 months or so, we brought a CMO in just to kind of round out that position because again, I had 4 or 5 direct reports coming to me, so we felt that a CMO would kind of help that some of that process to cut down on the interactions, but also to help manage a team from a holistic point of view. Again, because I'm in the marketing field, we do web design, we do graphic design, we do printing, we do social, we do Google Ads. There's a 6 different skill sets. So having a CMO that's looking at it holistically for my customer is a very important role because again, a customer could call up one of our account managers and say, hey, I want to do paid search. But really what they want to do is more social media management, or they want to integrate with something else. From that holistic point of view, I think that the CMO role serves a great purpose at our company.
that's great. And based on what you're talking about too, it's that development. So talking about your employees and being able to have the time to pour into them and develop them
Mm-hmm.
is a lot of work.
Sure.
Managing a large team and getting all that done is not quick or easy.
No. So, and again, I think that when I look at, the tenure of the employees and I look at what they want, we have this thing we call the 1-3-5. We meet a lot of times. I meet with them, but there are times where their direct supervisor will meet with them. What they want is where they see themselves in 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years, both from a financial standpoint, from a jobs perspective, from a what kind of responsibilities they want, as well as their home life. Like they want to be married, they want to own a home, they want to have children, like so that we can understand and collaboratively get to their goals. Again, at this point, I have a team of 25. We do a lot of work. We work with over 500 or 600 customers now. But now I want to develop this great team into the next level of themselves, so that they can start hitting all their goals. And I never want the corporate America that I left to become where they work.
Ooh, absolutely.
So one of the things that I'm firmly against is I don't want you making PowerPoint presentations for no reason. You need it for a meeting, bring it to a meeting. But don't think to make a PowerPoint to show this one, to show that one, to let me see it. Like, again, let's do all the things that I didn't like in corporate America. Let's not replicate them at Wingman.
Absolutely. And I think that's really smart. You mentioned a few minutes ago about making the decision to go the franchise route.
Mm-hmm.
What made you decide to go into franchising your business, and why was now a good time for that?
So I think that franchising for my business is something you don't see. You don't see a lot of marketing companies as franchises. You see a lot of food concepts, you see cleaning concepts, home services, but you don't usually see a marketing company. But the same problems that exist for a that you're solving with any of these other franchises happen in the marketing space. And again, I go back to when I started and I was doing all those things. We figured out a system that works for us. And then if I could bring guys and girls in that could follow the plan, and then they could run their own business without having to go hire. Again, I know what my payroll is. If you're going to start a marketing company, and again, you're not going to start on day one with all these employees, but if you start a marketing company and you have somebody helping you and you have someone answering the phones and you have someone doing the creative, you have a little payroll. But that one person that's doing all the work per se, not selling, doing the work, they're not going to be an expert in all. Whereas I feel like my team, my social team, my digital team, my web team, they're experts. So now you have experts working for you while you're out just going and making connections and meeting new people and making sales. Once they make a sale, I tie them to an account manager at Wingman. Then they help them through the process. So we've developed this, franchise model where you don't have to invest crazy amount of money. and you're going to get an award-winning team. I think it's a perfect match.
It sounds like a great match, because I think in working with entrepreneurs a lot myself, the part that's really difficult is all of the things that go on behind the scenes. Usually, folks are really, really good at whatever their thing is. But when it comes to the AR and the AP and the HR side of things or whatever it is behind the scenes of the business, that's where they really struggle.
Yeah, they're terrible at that because that's not of interest. And again, it's not of a lot of that stuff's not of interest to me. 10 years ago, I brought on a woman named Chelsea, who's now our chief operating officer, and I said to her, "Look, I'm not good at this stuff," and she goes, "I'm really good at this stuff." And we formed a great working relationship because she liked to take care of all the things that have no interest. She had no interest in going to sell a job. She had no interest in running the relationship over the next X amount. And again, my business is all about relationships. You have to be good at the relationship, otherwise it's never going to work. So, she was like, I can handle all your back office administrative tasks and things like that. So I was like, this is the greatest thing in the world, and it was a win-win. And now years later, she's our chief operating officer. She handles the HR, the payroll, the administrative things with the teams, like all the things that like just my eyes roll back as we start talking about them.
That makes a lot of sense. My husband and I were actually talking about this today. Um, as an entrepreneur, you have to learn, and the sooner you learn this, the better off you'll be. Hire people who are smarter than you at the things that you hate doing so that you can focus on what you're really good at and grow that skill. Don't try to
Totally.
be great at something that you hate.
They always say do the task that you hate the most or like that you dread the most. To me, delegate that task out because then you focus on the things that you need to do. Again, in my world, it's about making sure there's enough sales going on, enough that our account managers are making our customers happy, customer service. Again, we have between our locations, we have about 300 plus 5-star Google reviews. That's what's important to me is making sure our customers are happy, making sure we're doing the right work, making sure our employees are happy. That those administrative tasks like the account. Someone called today and said, someone emailed me today and said, "Oh, I have to get you a new credit card. What do?" I said, "Call Amy at the front desk, and Amy will take care of it. She will take your card number, process the card." Again, those are things that just tie me up. So I and again the bringing on account managers for me was big too because I didn't want the customers to have to wait. I wanted them to have instant access to if you have a website and you have social media and something's not right, like that stress is going through that entrepreneur's mind. There's something, even though nothing's going to happen, it's not the end of the world that there's an error on a website, but in their mind that's very important to them right now, and I didn't want to be the holdup. So again, I'm on your podcast, we're chatting for the 30-45 minutes today. I never wanted to be the holdup and say, "Oh, Tom, you were, I couldn't get access to you at 4:30 today." And I'd say, again, that's why I wanted to have account managers. And again, I think strong account managers make it great for the customer experience. And again, in the world we live in, a lot of guys are work from home, solo entrepreneurs in the digital and marketing space. I'm not that, so I wanted to be ahead of it. We staff our offices. We have someone that answers the phone 8:30 to 5, Monday to Friday, every day. We're not like, oh, just send us a text or send us an email. We'll take a text or an email, but we're also here that if you have a problem, we want you to be able to come down in person, sit down, go through it, and figure it out.
I love that. Because people at the end of the day are still doing business with people.
People are doing business with people, and then they get pissed. Then people get pissed off. You hear the people like, "Oh, they didn't get back to me for 2 weeks." Well, you're dealing with a company that's overseas, that's this or that. And again, there's a place for everybody in this world, and there's enough business to go around. But if you want to have a different experience, we could offer you that experience. And again, that's why the name of our company is Wingman. We are your wingman. We are your marketing. We are your business wingman. That 17 years ago, that's why we came up with that name, because we wanted to be that for businesses.
I love it. And I think that's great. And that's what a lot of businesses need today. So you have the opportunity to work with hundreds of small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are some of the big mistakes that you see entrepreneurs making when it comes to marketing?
You know, I believe that not because I'm in marketing, but because I believe this, you need to have a marketing plan. Praying that you're going to get a referral tomorrow is not a marketing plan. And I think too many businesses have been built on if you build it, they will come. You know, maybe in that movie, I forget the name of it, but Field of Dreams, that's the way it is, but in the real world that's not the way it is. And a lot of businesses that I work with, you know, the person was a good carpenter, so they opened a contracting company, but that doesn't make you a good businessman or woman. And I think that more people have to think about it. You look at, sometimes I look at, I'm on the Jersey Shore, like I told you, and parking's not everybody has good parking. There's places that have 3 or 4 parking spots, and I always think about, like, and I've said, my wife and I would be driving. I say, I don't know how the place is gonna. They put up a grand opening sign. I say they're gonna have a tough time in 6 months, because have they thought about, if they only have 5 parking spots, how much can you generate for those 5 cars that are there? How many people just pass by because they don't have the parking, and that a guy like myself has no interest in trying to circle a lot 2 or 3 times. I'll come back another day. But when you think about those things, did the business owner think about how much revenue you can generate per, if it's per hour, per parking spot, per whatever, to understand how many people need to come into that store to make it? And you look at some stores, their rent is still the same as a guy doing bigger business. The rent is still the same. Now your payroll might be lower, your cost of goods sold might be lower, but overall, you got to think about that whole picture. And I think that if more people thought about that up front, then they would have money to market. But instead, again, they were good at what they did, so they started a business, but they didn't think about that. And then they can't get out of that, just having a job, essentially, working for themselves. When someone can't do a small advertising budget, but they need the work, it's a catch-22. And now, again, there was many times in years where I hired people, and they took my salary, essentially, or they took part of my salary. But I knew I had a vision that, like, I wasn't playing for today or tomorrow. I was playing for 10 years from now. So, I was willing to give up my salary, or give up part of my salary, to hire that person to get the job done, because I saw longer term vision in that. Not a lot of people can do that, or will do that, or when you own a business, it's not about the salary. It's about making the business more and more successful, and then the money will follow. I've always been a fan of the money will follow.
I believe that wholeheartedly as well, and thinking for the future. You talk about a marketing plan. I think entrepreneurs need to take a step further back and really look at their business plan
Mm-hmm.
and their pro forma, and how does this really play out?
Yeah,
That's where those are some of the things that we really lean in with our clients on. How do you afford that marketing? And what's your return on
yeah,
investment? Some things in marketing take a while, but there
I
are other
agree with
things
you
that
on
you
that.
can yeah, that you can do to get a return quickly. So I totally agree with you on the marketing budget and understanding your plan there. So we really try to back up and help our clients with more than that. We want to know, what's your business plan? Do you have a pro forma? Are you planning things all the way out? And do you understand that if you don't have clients coming in the door, what that looks like for you? You do have to pay your rent. You've got to pay your employees. And how much time did you give yourself with that? Especially for folks who are bringing in debt in the process. You really need to look at this because you have a lot of responsibilities on your shoulders.
Yeah, it's hard because, again, I think a lot of small businesses don't think about a pro forma, don't think about a business plan. They, oh, my buddy can do it, I could do it. Oh, I know so many people. I talk to this guy, I talk to that guy, but that's not a overall business plan in the sense of where we're consistent revenue. And even with one of our franchisees, I say to him all the time, like, this is a numbers game, this is a contact sport. You got to keep going. Forget about the 5 guys that or 7 guys that might want to do business. Yeah, think about the total addressable market for small businesses. Like, that's well more than any of the number of friends you have. So know that going in, so that like that's the real number of what the business really looks like. So look at an area, looking at a plan of going after that. But I don't think a lot of small businesses think like that, and I think that that's the hard part. They think about the here and now, and a lot of them, are they're the chef if they own a restaurant, they're the painter if they own a painting company, and they always say you got to work on the business, not in the business. And I know that's harder said than done. I'd be the first to agree with that. But I think you have to take some of your time outside of being the doer and work on the business, because otherwise you're never going to get out of that. And I think it's harder because then you start making a couple bucks and that becomes your, in air quotes, salary. But going back to, sometimes you have to invest in the future and the employees to get there, and that's where I think, and again, people fall short because they're thinking about not giving up that money that they're making.
For sure. And whenever we come in and try to help with folks and figure out their salary and what that salary should be, we always try to put some metrics in place around making sure that we don't starve the business to death. So whenever we're working with folks, 60% is about the most we want to see them taking out of their net profits. Because whenever you get more than that, now you're running into issues paying taxes. Now you're not reinvesting. Now you're not setting yourself up for the future because you're bleeding the business dry.
Yep.
To improve your lifestyle. And that's the absolute last thing you need, because if you don't have, as you weather some of these seasons, which I'm sure you well know, being in business for a long time, if you don't have some money squirreled away, whenever you have these big catastrophic things that happen, and if they haven't happened to you yet, they will. I promise you. It really makes it hard, and that's why we have such a small business failure rate, and it's unnecessary in my opinion.
You're absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think once that lifestyle starts to change, it's hard. So if you think even in cars, like if you're driving a middle of the road car when you first start out, and then you go to a Mercedes, it's very hard to come off the Mercedes to go back to the middle if by chance the business slows, if some market conditions change. And it's just, as much as it's goofy, it's real.
It is. It's very real, and it's more of a mental challenge than anything else. And I think that also gets back to the grit that we were talking about initially. And what are you willing to do to make the business successful?
Mm-hmm.
Are you willing to do something that is uncomfortable, that hurts your pride? Because that's really what it's all about. Is it's a kick in the pride when things aren't going well, to build for the future. And the more people are willing and able to do that, the better off they'll be.
100% agree. We are 100% in agreement on this stuff.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate it. Today's conversation has been awesome, and I appreciate your insight. So, one question I have for you before we wrap up:
Mm-hmm.
What is one secret that you wish you would have known starting out in business as an entrepreneur?
I wish I would have. For the first couple of years, I thought I had to answer the phone. I thought I had to talk to everybody. I didn't realize that I didn't. I remember saying to a friend of mine one time, "Oh, I have to take the calls. I have to be the one answering." And he had been in business longer than me, and he's like, "What are you talking about?" So I wish that I knew those things earlier on, like to let go, invest and hire people that you trust. If you don't trust them, then get rid of them. But if you trust them, give them the power to get the job done, to do it. And they're going to make mistakes, just as if I was going to make mistakes. But learn from the mistakes and work together. So if I could have shed some of that stuff earlier on, I would have, because I think that'll help you. That helps you grow faster.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. And I think as entrepreneurs, the sooner we learn that this is a team sport, the better off that we will be.
Yep, and people have to delegate, and as an entrepreneur, I know that a lot of people want to hold it tight, but they don't realize they become the bottleneck.
Absolutely. And that just prevents your business from growing, and it prevents you from serving others, which is why the majority of us are really in business in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Tom, today has been wonderful. Before we wrap up, if our listeners want to connect with you or learn more about what you're working on, what's the best way for them to reach out?
The best way is you can email me at tom@wingmanplanning.com, or you can follow me on Instagram at wingman_Tom, and I'd be happy to connect.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody for listening to C-Suite Secrets. If you have found today's conversation as valuable as I have, be sure to hit that like and follow button. And most importantly, share this episode with somebody who's building a business. And if you're at the point in your business where you're working hard and the business is growing, but you're not keeping as much cash in your pocket as you should, or your numbers feel like a mystery, that's exactly why we built our One Room. In One Room, you get your very own banker and CFO in your business to help you simplify your numbers, understand what's actually driving profit, and start making decisions like a financially minded CEO. And if you want more between episodes, join us on Facebook at C-Suite Insiders Group and come find me on Instagram at Heather Parsons Official. Until next time, keep growing, and remember, you don't have to do this alone.